Mr. President.
Senator from Texas.
Mr. President, I rise today to discuss the mammoth $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill before the Senate. On Sunday night, we finally got to see the 2,700-page infrastructure bill that we will be voting on sometime tomorrow or Saturday. And what we saw is that Democrats want to give billions of dollars to unelected bureaucrats in the Biden administration to spend however they please. This bill spends $21.5 billion to create a new office at the Department of Energy called the Office of Clean Energy Demonstrations, which would give President Biden's Secretary of Energy the power to use taxpayer dollars to invest in whatever green energy initiative she likes. Reminiscent of Solyndra, we can have the same bankruptcies at taxpayer expense. This bill spends $24 million in taxpayer dollars to preserve the water in San Francisco Bay. And the Long Island Sound would receive $106 million in taxpayer dollars. As the New York Times reported, quote, climate resiliency programs would receive their largest burst of government spending ever from this bill. And the Wall Street Journal rightly called it, quote, a major down payment on President Biden's Green New Deal. That's exactly what this bill is. Furthermore, this bill institutes a new tax on 42 chemicals that will raise prices for everyday consumers. Texans will bear the brunt of these higher prices because 40% of the manufacturing plants that this new tax will hit are in Texas alone. But this tax will also hurt Louisiana and Michigan and Pennsylvania and Ohio and other manufacturing states. Indeed, this provision will also likely make many of the raw materials used in infrastructure projects more expensive. I filed an amendment that would strike this harmful provision. Not only will manufacturing plants in Texas be hurt by this new tax, but for some of these plants, the new taxes will exceed profit margins, leading to plant closings and more manufacturing moving to China. In effect, the loss of these plants would result in lower tax revenue to the federal government, not more. Imports would rise, U.S. exports would fall, and production in the United States would fall as well. Ironically, this infrastructure bill also tries to grow more critical minerals manufacturing and personal protective equipment, or PPE, manufacturing in America. But it places a brand new tax on both of these things. PPE is made with many of the 42 chemicals this infrastructure bill now wants to tax. And 4 of these chemicals are on the Biden administration's own critical minerals list. The old saying was, if it moves, tax it, and if it stops moving, subsidize it. Well, this bill taxes the things that we're trying to get moving in the first place. This bill is also a liberal spending wish list. The fact of the matter is, this bill spends too much money and it's not paid for. We're told that this bill would in part be paid for with $205 billion in repurposed COVID relief funds. But when the bill text was released, magically those funds weren't there. It became apparent instead only about $50 billion in COVID funds was being used to help pay for this bill. Some have claimed that the bill is paid for, but by any measure, the pay-fors are quite simply gimmicks. This is a bait and switch, and the bill is not paid for like we were promised. At a time when we've spent trillions of dollars already to combat a deadly pandemic, at a time when we're seeing rising inflation across the country, we can't responsibly be spending yet another $1 trillion.